What is up? Good morning, and welcome to WireTapped, Club Fantasy's weekly waiver wire show. Did you survive the bipocalypse? 6 teams were off last week, and it's not like we were all fighting for playoff spots. The good news is week 13 could not be more different. Nobody has the week off. All 32 teams are active, and now you have a bunch of dead weight that you can cut from your roster to get into this week's waiver wire. Let's find the best picks for you. What is up? Good morning and welcome to WireTapped, Club Fantasy's weekly waiver wire show. We're here to talk week 13 waivers. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, Josh Hudson. Josh, how did week 12 go for you?
Some good, some bad. Had a couple teams with Saquon Barkley, so can't complain there.
You had a great Scott Fish Bowl. You jumped into the division lead for the Blade division. I think you, for last week, were ranked in the top 100 or something like that. So.
I was actually just looking at that. 219.
Okay. At one point you were top 100, but it was a fluid.
It would have been nice if Lamar had thrown a touchdown pass to Zay Flowers. I might have actually still been in the top 100.
Yeah. And Gator chimes in right away. Round 2 of the Scott Fish Bowl playoffs. So Club Fantasy representing well. I beat the record or beat the cut line by 36 points. So I'm ranked in the 500s right now, but I'll take it. And this week not looking like a bad week for anybody really, with no bye weeks to deal with. So
yeah, I just want to quick little shout out to the Sneaky Girls. They unfortunately did not make the cut this week. A little disappointing there, but
they were very open. I say they were very open about the roughness of this season. They were CMC drafters, and he he let them down like he did just about everybody else in fantasy football this season. So they felt the wrath of burning an early round pick on a guy who let you down, something every fantasy manager can relate to. So yeah, Rowan and Maisie, a wonderful season that you'll obviously keep going on the podcasting side of things, just no longer in Scott Fish Bowl. Before we get into the whole thing, Josh, you and I made some observations when I was putting my list together today that the waiver wire sucks. Just putting that out there for everybody. This could actually be a short show. If you guys have questions, drop them, because we don't want to talk about any of these people. But we have some commentary for you. However, I do have a reasoning behind this. With 6 teams on bye, everybody had to sign everybody last week. So what's going to be interesting, Josh, is watching who gets cut this week, because you might.
Yeah, I almost feel like we should have saved this show for tomorrow morning.
Right? Yeah. This might be a better Wednesday. The waiver wire Thursday might be the best waiver wire of the season. And there is a 12:30 Thursday game. So you guys got to be careful with that. You got to get those players signed and in your roster if you plan on playing them right away. And as always, before I kick off the actual show, don't forget to check out our sponsor. We are partnered with the good folks over at Trophy Smack. There is an entire women of fantasy football line. Josh is holding up the belt right now. Rose gold, I believe, was added specifically for us. They really wanted to emphasize some very cool color schemes when it comes to women of fantasy football. Josh has that belt. I have my belt from 2020. Trophy Smack does great things. And if you use the link in the description of this video, which I believe is just Trophy Smack // correct, Josh?
Right. Yep.
If you use that link, scrolling at the bottom of your screen right now, we get a little bit of the proceeds. We use those proceeds to help promote women in fantasy football. We are constantly sending some of the great women that work with us to the Super Bowl, to the draft, to the combine. And we'd like to help them out a little bit more financially than just getting them the tickets. And that's what your contribution does. If you're already going to get something from Trophy Smack, why not help out your favorite website? We certainly appreciate it. Josh, as we always start the show, quick news. There is no quick news. Nobody got fired yet this morning. The Giants will get there eventually. So I am now writing the waiver article as Britt gets into her busy season. So it is my top 5 waiver ads. And Josh, I stuck with the theme of a bonus pick. When I looked at it this week, I only liked wide receivers. I did manage to throw one running back in there because the guy just keeps scoring touchdowns. That's Roschon Johnson coming out of Chicago. Devon Vele out of Denver. Demario Douglas out of New England. Xavier Legette out of Carolina. Marquez Valdez-Scantling out of New Orleans were my top 5. But Josh, I like to own up to my mistakes when I make them. And my bonus pick this week is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. So that was the list as I gave it to you guys last night so we could get the graphic created. I did my research this morning for the article while I wrote the article, and I actually think Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is the guy I would add as my number one priority out of this group, Josh. 6 touchdowns in the last 7 games. He has been super consistent. During that span, which is a long span, Josh, he's the wide receiver 17 in fantasy. This is a wide receiver 2 that's sitting out there in like 90% of leagues because we think of this as a fluke. I don't think you can call 6 games a fluke. He is clearly the touchdown scorer in a Will Levis-led offense.
He's MVSing better than MVS.
100%. Like, and it's so hilarious that you busted my balls about even including MVS in the article. Jay busted my balls about finding a picture of MVS. If I just had given myself more time to write the article last night, I could have helped you guys switch it. We would have never needed the picture. You would have never yelled at me about MVS, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine would be getting the respect that's due.
Yeah, like I've stashed Nick Westbrook-Ikhine on a few like deeper dynasty leagues just because it's like, why the fuck not? Like, he's scoring touchdowns, and at the end of the day, like, that's what we want. The volume, of course, isn't there. It's not going to be there. He's not some world beater at wide receiver, but he's playing the complementary role to Calvin Ridley
perfectly
better than what DeAndre Hopkins was doing.
Yeah, because DeAndre Hopkins isn't a complimentary wide receiver. So.
Exactly. DeAndre Hopkins is an alpha. Calvin Ridley is an alpha. So they need somebody that can go down the field, that can stretch the defense to keep the attention off of the wide receiver 1. Westbrook-Ikhine has that kind of speed where he can get downfield, and we know the type of arm that Will Levis has. So why not chuck it up? See what happens.
But he keeps doing. He literally does it every week.
And you know what? And we talked about this in the preseason too. This Tennessee offense is an extension of what they're doing in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Brian Callahan came from there. He's now the head coach in Tennessee. This is exactly what they do with T. Higgins. They let him go down the field. The difference is T. Higgins obviously is a much better wide receiver, so they're going to look for him more on different types of routes, whereas Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is who he is. He's just somebody that's going to stretch the field, get down the field, pray to God he catches the football. When you're scoring 6 touchdowns in 7 games, that's kind of what you do, and you're catching the football. So
yeah, it works out well. I think I did 1 or 2 best ball drafts before Hopkins landed in Tennessee, and I think I have 1 or 2 rosters with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I need to go back and take a look because I liked him before Hopkins ended up there. This has kind of been his MO. He finds the end zone, and he's just doing it better than anybody in the league at this stretch. So if I were going into the waivers right now, Demario Douglas is a desperation ad. He literally is going to score. So is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Let me be perfectly clear. If I'm going in, Josh, if I'm looking for a running back, it's Roschon Johnson. If I'm looking for a wide receiver, it's Vele or Westbrook-Ikhine. Well, let's talk about Roschon Johnson because the volume in week 12 wasn't there. He only touched the ball, I think, 3 times. But he finds the end zone again, Josh. That is 6 touchdowns this season. Off the top of my head, I don't have the stats right now in front of me. I don't think a single tight end in football right now has 6 touchdowns.
I can tell you right now, actually. False. So, George Kittle has 8. Kraft and Mark Andrews both have 6.
Okay. But so we're talking the best tight ends versus Roschon Johnson, who's available in 85% of leagues. So Johnson's on the thumbnail. Obviously, we want to give him some play. He's playing a complimentary role to DeAndre Swift, Josh, and we thought this whole DeAndre Swift thing was going to, go up in flames, but he's played well enough that he's earned that job and it's not going anywhere. But Roschon Johnson is the goal line back, which is pretty incredible because that's certainly not how he's built.
No, yeah. I mean, he's not much bigger than DeAndre Swift. He's just more powerful. Like, DeAndre Swift has always struggled in the red zone. I mean, that goes all the way back to his Detroit Lions days. That's why he was always in a timeshare, aside from the fact that he couldn't stay healthy. But even in Philadelphia, he kept coming out of the game, or, they would insert Kenneth Gainwell, of all people, who's a smaller back than DeAndre Swift. Or they would just tush-push with Jalen Hurts, right? So with Roschon getting these valuable touches, this is pretty par for the course if you've ever rostered DeAndre Swift. There's value in that. Yes, 2 weeks ago he had 11 carries. This week I think he only had 3. But he scored in both games, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or at least last week, or this past week.
This week he definitely scored. I think he didn't score last week, but then I think he scored 2 weeks before that.
So. Yeah. So, and that's, again, it all boils down to touchdowns, right? Like, we value we value running backs who catch passes in PPR. Well, we value running backs, period, if they score touchdowns.
Yep.
That's what Roschon's doing right now. The running back share in Chicago is heavily favoring DeAndre Swift. But when this offense can actually move the football, it favors Roschon because he's the one that scores touchdowns.
Well, and you have this wonderful trio of wide receivers, and when they get used properly, you get more carries inside the 5-yard line. That's just the nature of how it's going to go. And finally, we saw good football out of Caleb Williams. I guess the thing is, looking at Roschon, is he's the best of a bad bunch, Josh. Like, looking at these running back waivers, there were no major injuries this week. We got to keep an eye on J.K. Dobbins, but you're looking for guys. We talked about this a lot last week. Roschon's kind of that in between, sort of like Tyler Algier, where he is a solid handcuff, but he has standalone value. I'm not mad if I have to play Roschon Johnson in my flex right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, it's really more so just like deeper leagues where you're going to feel more comfortable with Roschon because there haven't been the number of running back injuries of late this season.
Exactly.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Josh jinxing everybody.
Can't do this. I got a lot invested in big time running backs.
Yeah.
But no, like, and that's really what it boils down to is availability, right?
Yeah.
The stars are available. They're playing. The backups right now don't need to play. So all of that is par for the course, right? Like we've talked about it really over the last month. It's handcuff season.
Yep.
The guys that you're ultimately picking up at the running back position are the ones that you're just stashing in the event that the starters get hurt. And right now they just haven't been hurt.
All right. You guys are quiet this morning. Not a lot of viewership. I think everybody's hungover, maybe traveling for the holiday. If you have questions, we're going to run this show. Usually the show takes about an hour and a half. If it stays like this, it's going to take 45 minutes, but we are here to answer every single question. If you guys drop it in the chat, we will get it. I also remind you, hit like and subscribe. Even if you're not watching this live on a Tuesday morning, we go live 5 days a week. We do shows 6 days a week. Club Fantasy is here to help you with all of your fantasy football needs. Least you can do is subscribe to the channel. It helps us out, works the Google algorithm to make sure more people see us on YouTube. We'd appreciate it. But as we move on, Josh, we like to take a look and see what did we learn in week 12. The rest of this show is going to be dedicated to the waiver wire. But you know what? We got to make these decisions based on something. And we like to look at the data thread put out by JJ Zacharyson, Dwayne McFarland's utilization report, and Ryan Heath's stats recap from Fantasy Points. We like to use these things to kind of, pick and find some great stats for you folks to let you know why we're making some of our decisions. Josh, go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, we've been shitting on Rico Dowdle a lot, and
yeah.
I know Joe Zolo is probably the biggest culprit of this, but
yeah, and then he just kind of infects us where like, Josh, you and I have noticed the numbers have been there, but we can't be nice to Rico Dowdle because then Joe will be mean to us. So,
well, Joe's been mean to me for 8 years. I've stopped giving a shit about that.
Yeah.
But I think it's also partly like my hatred of the Dallas Cowboys,
obviously,
but also too, this offense is just bad. Like at the end of the day, do you really want to feel comfortable starting any of these guys? No, I don't even feel that comfortable starting CeeDee Lamb right now, and he's CeeDee fucking Lamb, right? But the target share is there, so you feel okay starting CeeDee Lamb. With Rico Dowdle, we kind of need to start paying attention. 2 of his last 4 games, he's been at or more 10 fantasy points. 5 of his last 7 have fallen in the same category. He's had 4 straight games with 10 or more carries, 3 of his last 5 with 5 or more targets. He hasn't scored a rushing touchdown this season, but he has 3 receiving touchdowns. At the end of the day, there are worse running backs out there.
Very true.
Like, I'm kind of at a point, and I've been shitting on Ramondre Stevenson because the volume's there and nothing else. I feel more comfortable starting Rico Dowdle over Ramondre Stevenson right now.
Yeah, you can't feel comfortable starting Ramondre Stevenson, plain and simple, because, while the volume is there, there's zero production. We've hit this for weeks now. That New England offensive line cannot run block, plain and simple. So,
well, and here's the other side of it. Rico Dowdle's averaging about 4.5 yards a carry. Ramondre Stevenson's at 3.7.
Wow.
Like, one's actually, like, moving the football.
Yeah.
The other's hitting a wall, and that's it. Can't break through it. Which is sad because he's 230 pounds.
Yeah. Don't even get me started. Ramondre Stevenson has essentially ruined my season, plain and simple. But no, I think you're right. I think we need to start showing Dowdle some respect. It's not Ezekiel Elliott. The Dalvin Cook signing was a smoke screen if we've ever seen one. It's Rico Dowdle. And what's funny is Jerry kind of said that at the beginning of the year that it was going to be Dowdle. We just didn't want to believe him because who the fuck is Rico Dowdle?
Because he hasn't been good. That's the other side of it too. Is like, just because somebody tells you, yeah, we want to get them involved, if the tape shows you they're not a good running back, why are we going to believe you? Right. But he's starting to show some life. Granted, I mean, he's only averaging 10 fantasy points a game. Like, it's not anything world beater. Like, it's a very low end RB2. It's a uninspiring flex play. Like, it's not anything sexy by any means. But, you know, as the season starts going on, what you're looking for are healthy running backs. He's a healthy running back. And
100%.
Doesn't have a lot of competition for touches either.
No. Guys, we see the questions starting to pop up in the chat. Give us a second to finish this segment. We'll get it up here. But Josh, Deebo Samuel, San Fran might have a problem.
Yeah. Juwan Jennings is the new wide receiver 1 there in San Francisco. Over the last 3 weeks, Jennings leads the 49ers in target share. And Deebo Samuel is averaging a whopping 7.3 fantasy points per game. Oof. I thought that with CMC coming back, we might be able to get more of that Deebo Samuel role. But if anybody has listened to Club Fantasy, specifically myself, for, I don't know, the better part of 3 years, I've told you that Deebo Samuel, while an electric playmaker,
not a great wide
is
receiver.
Not a good wide receiver.
Yep.
He's not a route runner. He's not a tactician. He can't do the things that a really good wide receiver can do. This is why he shines with Brandon Ayuk.
They can scheme to get him open.
Exactly. Brandon Ayuk is hurt. Can't do that with Deebo now because Juwan Jennings is a fraction of what Brandon Ayuk was.
Yeah, the two best plays Deebo made on Sunday, I think, were kick and punt returns. Like, every time I heard his name mentioned, it was on a kick or a punt return. Great for Scott Fishbowl, not great for most fantasy managers.
And I know Joe has brought this up on our Wednesday show. Defenses are starting to figure out this Kyle Shanahan scheme. And that, I think, is the biggest thing when it comes to Deebo's production and utilization, because so much of it comes on schemed plays where they're scheming to get him the football. He needs to come up with some new tricks because Deebo ain't doing it right now.
And that kind of lends itself, Josh. I'll just say my third point right now. The 49ers, I think, are in trouble. The last 2 weeks are 2 losses, back-to-back losses. 2 weeks ago was their first loss to Seattle in 3 years. And then they lose Nick Bosa and Brock Purdy and get boat raced by the Green Bay Packers. Watching the game, Christian McCaffrey does not look right as a runner. They're not even really involving him that much in the passing game. I think he had 1 touch through like 25 minutes of that game on Sunday. And I wrote in here, Deebo can't get open because you did your stuff after I did my stuff. So not just is this a Deebo Samuel problem, this is a San Francisco 49ers problem. And I am gobsmacked that Brandon Allen starts this game with a huge splint on his hand. Like, why not start Josh Dobbs? The kid fumbles on the first quarter. Like, so many weird things going on with the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, keep in mind, too, I believe Trent Williams missed this game as well.
He did. You're absolutely right.
The moment that he's out of this game,
the 49ers
offense looks like it believes in junior varsity. Like, it's so bad. I will never understand how one player on an offensive line, like, if they miss that game, it's like the whole line is just terrible. Because there's still 4 other pieces and 3 or 4
be able
other
to do
pass rushers
something
that need to go through. Like, that one guy being gone is just like terrible for this scheme. They need to invest more in this offensive line. It is unbelievably terrible. So bad.
Yeah, and I'll just end this as we move on to the 49ers are in last place in the NFC West right now at 5-6. Now that division is still wide open, and 2 teams are 6-5, 2 teams are 5-6. Josh, let's talk about one of these 6-5 teams because we saw an interesting part of their offense this week.
Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals, I don't really know what's going on with this offense.
Yeah.
Because we all had high hopes for Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's a high-end prospect. Obviously, the name plays into it. But I'm starting to think that they spent a 4th overall draft pick just to make Trey McBride a god. This dude had a 40.5 target share on Sunday. 40.5% target share.
For a tight end, folks.
Me? For a tight end? He's the tight end 3 on the season. We touched on this a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
And has scored 0 receiving touchdowns. 0. You give him 4 receiving touchdowns, he's a tight end 1 on the season.
Yep.
But there's only been, I think, 4 tight ends that have finished the season, like in a top end season, without a touchdown. And one of them was Cole Kmet. Remember when we used to shit on Cole Kmet because
I was literally just going to say, are we going to have to start making fun of Trey McBride?
I don't want to do this because I like Trey McBride. He's a good tight end.
Yeah. No, I think McBride's going to be just fine, but I did think it was hilarious, Josh. We talked about this. His only touchdown this season was a fumble into the end zone that he fell on. It was not his fumble. It was someone else's fumble. They just cannot score touchdowns with him. Josh, my thing, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. I truly think Bucky Irving has league winning potential. Watching Bucky Irving, and he's not as fast, but he is as quick. Watching Bucky Irving is reminding me of watching Devon Achane last year. 7 yards per carry this week, and then threw in 6 quick catches, which is what we needed as fantasy managers. Looking at the season, 5 yards per carry, which is something no Tampa Bay running back has done in the last 3 seasons. But more importantly, Josh, he has caught 32 of the 34 passes they've thrown his way. He is a great receiving back. He just can't run block, and that's why they keep keeping Rachaad White in the game. But I think if Tampa Bay truly unlocks this kid, he's going to win fantasy championships this year.
Dude, I've been a Bucky fan for a while, and so many people soured on him because of such a bad combine. But you turn on that Oregon tape, that dude is so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
So much fun. Like, he's great in the passing game. He's always had high catch percentages, and you're seeing it now with what he's been able to do this season. It was only a matter of time before he usurped this job from Rachaad White, because Rachaad White is just not good at football, plain and simple.
Yeah.
He does one thing well, he catches passes. But the team likes him, and that's fine. I get it. You don't want to throw the reins to a rookie because they're going to end up costing you in a pivotal spot. But when you're averaging what he's averaging throughout this season, move off of Rachaad White.
Get this
Seriously,
kid the ball.
You've got a better third stringer than you do a starter right now.
Yeah.
Like, stop with this.
100%. And then, Josh, I couldn't go a whole season without giving positive light to my guy, Keenan Allen. I just feel like I didn't understand the Chicago landing spot when it happened. I understand it was a trade. I don't know how much say he had in the matter. I think he could have been a monster for the Chargers. And I'm going to leave Jay's comment up here because he said, did someone say Tampa Bay? I know that Keenan Allen was hurt, but Tampa Bay could have traded for him when they lost Chris Godwin. That's every football wet dream I've ever had, Josh, is Mike Evans and Keenan Allen on one team together. I don't know if I don't know how I could have functioned for the rest of the season. This past week, Keenan Allen, 15 targets, catches 9 of them for 86 yards and a touchdown. And I'm not saying Ladd McConkey's not doing his thing out there for the Chargers, but the fact of the matter is this. I think Keenan Allen could have been such a better player for the Chargers, would have been a big part of what is looking like a really good offense. But again, could have been a great for a team like Tampa Bay at the trade deadline. It didn't happen. That's only his 3rd game this entire season with 10 targets. Keenan Allen is a volume receiver. He had 8 games with 10 targets or more last season. I just don't like the way they're using him in Chicago. They're wasting my guy, Josh.
Yeah, it's interesting too. The Bears have only had 2 games this season where any one player has seen 30% or more target share. And it's literally happened in back-to-back weeks. Last week was, or 2 weeks ago, was Rome Odunze. This past week was Keenan Allen. I'll tell you what, though, when I was watching parts of this game, Keenan, like there was a lot of those jokes about, Keenan Allen's weight in the offseason, like, beefing
He's
up.
a tight end.
That motherfucker looked like a tight end on the field. I was like, holy crap, he looks big.
Yep.
Maybe that's playing into it with the injuries and whatever else. I don't know, but didn't really look good. You
remember the Mike Williams that played for Detroit back in the day?
Yeah. And how he ballooned up and
there was a joke about him that he was a Big Mac away from being a tight end, and that joke has just always stuck with me, and it's kind of lending itself towards my guy right now. But I still hold He would have been a great asset elsewhere. We got 2 questions, Josh. Let's get Steven George up on the screen here. Our buddy Steven has to drop 1 out of Bryce Young, Aiden O'Connell. Seeing Aiden O'Connell called AOC is just hilarious to me. If you follow politics at all, I was just like, what does she have to do with this? But Bryce Young, Aiden O'Connell, Ricky Pearsall, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Jalen McMillan, it's half-point PPR superflex. He needs to start 2 of these 4 at quarterback, superflex, and quarterback and superflex. So, Josh, is there any world where you're not starting the 2 quarterbacks? I know. So let's start with who are you dropping from this bunch? I think it's pretty easily Pearsall or McMillan. It's just how do you feel about it? I was going to say,
you can drop both of those guys. There's no value in either of them. McMillan's not doing anything. Pearsall's an afterthought. Westbrook-Akine is the upside play. And obviously, since it's super flex, you want the quarterbacks.
And then I was going to ask you, Josh, is Westbrook-Akine's upside, which is good, but it's still like 12 points. Is his upside worth starting over Aiden O'Connell? I think we're both pretty comfortable with starting Bryce Young, especially against that Tampa Bay defense.
Yeah, the way that Bryce Young has played, he's definitely on the upswing. This would be O'Connell's first game back off injury.
Yeah, and which is not even guaranteed yet.
Kansas City. Yeah, and it's against Kansas City. I think your starts here are Bryce and Westbrook pretty easily, truthfully.
I completely agree with that. Bryson Westbrook, Steven, good luck this week. That's a rough one for week 13.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it's a deep league. I think he said in the past it's like a 14-teamer or something.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So. Well, thank goodness Bryce Young got it back together for you.
Yeah, right.
And then Spitty wants to know, is Turpine a good pickup off of waivers in a league that gives return yards? I think it has to.
I think it's hilarious that this got put up because when I saw his name on the show sheet in the wide receiver section, big and bold, stop it. Just stop it. He had one target this week, but it was the punt return or it was the kickoff return, right?
Exactly.
So people see that.
Plus,
4 targets over the last 3 weeks.
Normally,
for this point, it's return yards.
Yes.
You look at a league like Scott Fishbowl.
He's the number 1 wide receiver in Scott Fishbowl right now.
Kevontae Turpin has so much value as a result of that. So in a league where you get points for return yards, 1,000%. He shouldn't even be on waivers.
Yeah. So Josh, I want to let you know my method here. So I try to go and get the people whose names we're going to get asked about. Clearly, I predicted this perfectly. And then I go and I look at their last 3 weeks, not just one good week. And when I saw the 3 targets and the 86 yards last week, I was like, okay, I think he deserves to be on the sheet. And if we're going to shit on him, we're going to shit on him. But I completely agree. In return yards leagues, he shouldn't even be out there, Smitty. Go grab this guy.
Agreed.
Josh, this might be the fastest we've ever gotten to the actual free agent portion of the free agent show. Guess what, guys? No buys this week. All 32 teams active, but it is a weird scheduling week. Happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate. Happy Thursday to those who don't. There will be 3 games on Thursday. They are all spread out. I don't think there's any overlap. 12:30, 4:30, and 7:30. So somewhere those times aren't exact, but it's close to those times. So you'll have 3 games on Thursday.
And there's also Friday.
Then we also have the Black Friday game that they started, I think, last year. So 8 teams are going to be active in the first 2 days of the week. So you need to pay a lot of attention this week. So Josh, as I mentioned, we're going to start with the quarterbacks. I listed everybody who I think is going to get asked about. And then we'll talk about the ones that if we think any of these are a trap, I wouldn't call any of them a trap, but some are certainly better than others. So at quarterback, you got Russell Wilson out there in 50% of leagues, Matt Stafford, 60%, Caleb Williams, 60%, Drake May, 80%, Jameis Winston still out there in 90% of leagues with all that volume. Bryce Young, 95%. That makes sense. And Josh, I think we need to talk about Will Levis because he's kind of been a running joke. He's out there in 95% of leagues. He's kind of balling as of late.
Well, the last 2 of his last 3, he's finished in the top 13 at the quarterback position. Which
I didn't even realize there's still 2 more guys on my list because I didn't scroll down far enough. Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr. Trevor Lawrence is probably a trap. So is Derek Carr. Get back to Will Levis, Josh.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But no, like, I mean, which really, when you look at those finishes over the last 3 weeks, kind of unfathomable considering how bad he was to start this season. It was really just kind of a running joke. I mean, we talked about this in the offseason. You know, if there's any of these guys that were kind of going later in rounds, who do you think would kind of have some upside? And Will Levis was one of those guys for me. It wasn't necessarily about the talent. I mean, we knew there were going to be question marks. He was a 2nd-round pick, so it wasn't even somebody that came in with such high expectations. He's going into a 2nd year, learning a brand new system. There was going to be ups and downs. But what I was buying into was the Bengals system that the Tennessee Titans were going to deploy this season. And now you're starting to see it. We touched on it a little bit with Nick Westbrook-Akine when we talked about him and the role that Calvin Ridley has played in this offense sans DeAndre Hopkins, right?
Yep.
He's been great. Calvin Ridley has. He's been absolutely fantastic. Super high target shares, been productive. I mean, yeah, he's 29 years old. You don't love it for the long term, but hey, you know what? They're buying into him because they gave him a 4-year contract and he missed practically 2 years. He's still he's fresh legs. So there's a lot to love here. But what I like the most, he's thrown 2 interceptions the last 3 games, which much better trajectory.
I was going to say, it's usually 2 per game for Will Levis.
Yeah, right. And he has 5 touchdown passes in these 3 games, right? So we're trending in the right direction here. Last 2 games, he's been over 275 passing yards. Also very good. Tennessee has the easiest remaining schedule in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position.
Yeah,
they get Washington this week.
Yep.
They have 2 games against Jacksonville. They play Cincinnati and the Colts in week 16.
Not a lot of good defenses there, folks.
Exactly. So if we start to see this progression with Will Levis, there's an opportunity that you can stream your way not only into the fantasy playoffs, but potentially a fantasy championship.
I mean, those dates with Jacksonville are so appealing right now, and that date with Cincinnati now that you bring it up. So, I
didn't even mention the fact what's making this so much easier for him. Tony Pollard is absolutely balling at the running back position for them. When you have a running game that can take pressure off you as a quarterback, it's only going to make your job easier. You just don't have to make mistakes. Will Levis he's starting to limit those.
Yeah, like I said, the kid's playing well, and I'll kind of spread some of that same light over to Bryce Young. He's not playing to the extent of Will Levis quite yet, but he is seeing marked improvement, and he also has those 2 dates, Josh, with Tampa Bay on his schedule, week 13 and then week 17, the championship week as well. So Bryce Young is another guy in Superflex leagues. You know, we just had that question earlier in the show from Steven. In Superflex leagues, Will Levis and Bryce Young, they're kind of that ideal 3rd and even 2nd quarterback right now.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I've been a Bryce Young fan. He was my QB1 last year, even ahead of CJ Stroud. I think there's a lot to like. Yes, you don't love the height issues and things of that nature. I mentioned in the beginning of the season, the Panthers revamped their offensive line.
Yep.
Offensive lines do not gel immediately.
They do not.
Plain and simple. They take some time. With Bryce Young playing better, that's coinciding with the offensive line starting to mesh. Okay. We know how good Chuba Hubbard has been this year, and a lot of it has been very volume-based. He had another pretty solid game this week against the Chiefs, which I wasn't expecting.
No one was
expecting
53 yards and a touchdown.
Exactly. And Bryce Young came in and played well. Still has a lot of work to do, mostly at the receiver position. He's dealing with a lot of young guys. I mean, David Moore is leading this team in route percentage. What the fuck is a David Moore? Seriously, I haven't heard this guy's name in 8 years.
Yeah.
Adam Thielen coming off of IR, getting back into the fold. They left off Jalen Coker with Adam Thielen coming back. So we need Xavier Legette to get going. We need Adam Thielen to be the veteran in this locker room. We need Jatavian Sanders to heal his neck like super fast, because that kid was looking great.
There's potential there, folks.
So there's a lot of potential here with Bryce Young as the season goes on.
And Josh, Stephen George asked a question that I think you are the most well-equipped person to answer. Do we think there's any fantasy success against Philadelphia, a defense that is fantastic right now?
I love how I start singing somebody's praises.
And now we have to shit on them.
Yeah. There's no way on God's green earth that Bryce Young is going to do anything against Philadelphia.
You cannot start him in week 14. Enjoy week 13.
There's no way you can start Bryce Young week 14. I mean, you might have to. There's 6 more teams on a bye in week 14.
Especially, and then Steven's team is that team where he has to start Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez this week.
Yeah. Well, hopefully O'Connell is somewhat healthy by week 14.
Yeah, I think, and I think he being Steven is in a unique situation that we do like Akine's upside at that super flex position, and then he gets to wait a week to see if O'Connell can do it. Because the other thing is the Raiders threw the ball second most in the NFL in week 12.
And O'Connell has not been afraid to sling it either.
Yeah.
So, they're opening up the offense. They're willing to throw the football. Jacoby Myers is a volume play. Obviously, we know how good Brock Bowers has been. There's potential there. So I'm not as worried about that. But yeah, there's no way on God's green earth you can feel comfortable starting Bryce Young against Philly. Of course, I say that, and it's going to end up being a trap game, and Bryce Young's going to be, QB5 on the week because that's my luck. So
yeah. Shout out, we got someone who survived the Saquon Barkley onslaught, won their game by 3 points. I know a lot of people were sweating out. Yeah, a lot of people were sweating out the Monday night game, Austin. So I don't know if Monday night did anything for you there, but that's an interesting one. And Josh, I feel like, I don't know if it's been Jeff every week. I feel like we've gotten this question for 3 consecutive weeks now.
Yeah.
And I feel like our answer has changed every damn time. So last week, TJ Hawkinson kind of shit the bed, last week being week 11. Week 12, he comes out and goes 7 for like 107 or something like that. I might be a little off there, but it's something along those lines. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, Josh, I don't know what Otten did last week.
4 fantasy points. He was terrible.
Okay.
He was terrible.
So
here's the thing. I don't like rest of season questions.
Yeah,
I don't,
especially
at the tight end position, because you're playing matchups week in and week out. I'm fairly certain I was on this train. I have a very short memory span. I work in the restaurant industry, and I have to. For me, it's TJ Hawkinson, and it was TJ Hawkinson. He's just the better player, plain and simple.
Yeah, I think you're right, Josh. I don't think your answer has changed. It's me who's waffled. So, and that makes sense because I'm the streaming guy.
I like Cade Otton. He's a young guy. The biggest question was, how would his game be affected with the return of Mike Evans? And it was always, Evans will be that number 1. Maybe Otton slides into the 2, but then you have the running backs to deal with, right? Because Rachaad White has been very active in the passing game. Oh, by the way, here comes Bucky Irving catching 6 passes on 6 targets this week.
Sterling Shepard was targeted 7 times. He didn't do shit with it, but he was targeted 7 times.
Exactly. So I like, to me, I think Hawkinson is still the tried and true, like, I can rely on him. He's a quality target. Yes, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Minnesota, but to me, it's not the end of the world. Like, even with Justin Jefferson, I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson. Even with these number 1 guys, you're always going to have, down weeks because defenses are going to start shifting coverages.
Yeah.
And there's enough playmakers on that Minnesota team. Jordan Addison was wide receiver 1 this week. TJ Hawkinson was the top 5 tight end, I believe, this week. So there's plenty of options there. They can spread the football around. So then defenses are going to say, well, shit, now I got to pay attention to the show. So, and boom, there goes your 10 catch, 170 yards for Justin Jefferson, right?
Yep, because they're focusing on the other guys.
Exactly. So TJ Hawkinson's always going to have, value in that offense. Cade Otton is still Cade Otton. He's an ascending talent, but he's not there yet.
He's not TJ Hawkinson.
Correct. So I'm less likely to rely on him, but if the right matchup is there and your roster is something, you can start 2, maybe 3 flexes, then yeah, play that matchup and you can roll Cade Otton out there. But I'm not rolling out 2 tight ends if I only have 1 flex spot, unless I'm desperate for bye weeks.
And I think the moral of the story is, Jeff, if you're asking this question because you want to cut one of these guys, don't. You're going to have to ride with one of them on your bench.
Yeah, especially because the waiver wire sucks right now.
Exactly. Play your own streaming game with 2 of the best tight ends in fantasy instead of the absolute trash in fantasy. Moving on to the running back waivers, Josh, and I'm going to list a lot of names, but I'm going to be honest, you probably don't want most of these names. In the article, by the way, I don't think I actually mentioned this. The article is live at clubfantasyffl.com right now. We drop that about 2 hours before the show every single Tuesday. So if you guys are looking for more in-depth analysis on our top 5 pickups, I write that article every single week. It drops Tuesday at about 8 in the morning. So check that out, clubfantasyffl.com. In the article, Josh, I talk about Roschon Johnson. We covered him a little bit at the beginning of the show, but we do need to talk about, I'm going to list all the guys and let you talk. Gus Edwards, he's out there in 75% of leagues. J.K. Dobbins picks up a knee injury last week. For that same reason, Kamani Vidal, but they actually didn't even use him last night. I think they went.
Well, he was a healthy scratch.
I didn't even realize that.
Hassan Haskins is usually the RB3 there.
Because he can play special teams.
Yeah, and Vidal was active when Gus Edwards was out.
There you go.
When Dobbins and Edwards are playing, Vidal is out.
So there's a chance Vidal jumps into the lineup, could do something if Dobbins misses time. Justice Hill out there in 75% of leagues, takes a long touchdown last night. Tyre Algier, the most important handcuff in fantasy football right now, 60% available. Trey Benson, 75%. Jalen Wright, 95%. Ray Davis, 90%. We've gotten into the rookie running back portion. And you'll notice I did not list Blake Corum because I'm not going to handcuff for something where he's never going to see a touch. That's just how I feel about it. Zach Charbonnet out there in 50% of leagues. Jordan Mason, I want to talk about him, 55% of leagues. Jeremy McNichols, I learned something this past week. Josh, Jeremy McNichols, I said, we got to worry about Chris Rodriguez. I did not realize that just before the game, Washington cut Chris Rodriguez. So I don't know if they're going to bring him back with these injuries now. But Jeremy McNichols, if these running backs have to miss time, it's interesting. Amir Abdullah, who was in Jeremy McNichols' role a week early, he's out there in 80% of leagues. And then Alexander Madison, hopefully back this week, 50% of leagues. But Josh, let's talk about Gus Bus. Because he found the end zone, which is what we want from Gus Edwards. But he also had like 9 carries for 11 yards.
Yeah, he has really not been efficient this year when given the opportunity. Now, granted, he's missed quite a bit of time. I think it was like 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, with injury. Yeah, last year, and really even throughout his entire career in Baltimore, he was consistently over 5 yards a carry. He was usually a pretty efficient back. Obviously, we know about the touchdown spikes from last year, scored 13. He's usually good for a touchdown when he has the full load and the opportunity, right? If Dobbins misses this week, I think you can dial up Gus at minimum as a flex just for that touchdown upside. But for whatever reason, that juice is just not there this year at all. I don't know if it's the knee injury that's just kind of sapped it, or what. Maybe it's just, he forgot how to run in a Greg Roman scheme. I don't fucking know. But it's just not there. I don't feel that comfortable, especially when no teams are on a bye this week.
Yep.
But if you tell me that J.K. Dobbins misses 2 weeks and we're talking week 14, I'll feel more comfortable with Gus as an RB2 because I don't have anybody else to start at that point.
Yeah, Derrick Henry's missing week 14, folks. So you're going to need somebody. Josh, when I watched the 49ers, I only caught a couple plays of the game because it was a pretty shit game. But there was a play where they brought Jordan Mason in, and I'm shocked. I just went and looked at his stat line. He only had 8 yards in that entire game. But he had a play. It was probably all 8 of his yards. So he probably had 2 carries for 0 yards after this. But on that 8-yard run, he looked good. He looked fast. He ran people over. But they only gave him 2 more carries. He only had 2 targets in the game. Coming into this, he had 0 targets in 3 consecutive games and only had 9 carries in those 3 games before this week. They have went back to CMC, who, putting it bluntly, doesn't look like CMC. Would they not be in a better position to at least mix this up a little bit and get Mason, who was the RB3 when he left, get him more involved?
Well, I mean, coaches are creatures of habit. We talk about this all the time. They're egomaniacs. They're stubborn. Not all of them take what the defense gives you. They just believe in their scheme and they say, come beat me. And if they come beat them, they throw up the white flag, right? We see it all the time. This is why Kyle Shanahan sucks coming from behind in games because he can't call plays.
He won't change his plays.
Does not change. When he got CMC, there was a lot of turnover at the running back position, right? Like he had Elijah Mitchell there. He had, Jeff Wilson Jr. He had Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman. He had all these different guys, right? And it looked like it was more of a committee approach. But when you break it down game by game, each of these guys were seeing 80-something% of the running back share week in and week out when they were healthy. So the turnover is just that he was running these guys into the ground, and that was that. So when you get an elite talent like Christian McCaffrey, you're going to get 80 to 85 to 90% of the touches at the running back position, and everybody else is left for dead. So as long as Christian McCaffrey's on that football field, nobody else fucking matters, plain and simple.
Yeah.
At all. Because that's the Kyle Shanahan way. He was on the Washington staff with his dad back when Alfred Morris was at the running back position. Alfred Morris was not a great running back, but he fit that system.
Yeah.
1,600 something yards on 75-80% of the running back share.
And then never did anything else in his career.
And then never did anything else because he couldn't run outside of a one-cut running back system.
Yeah.
So this is par for the course. We should not be shocked by this. Kyle Shanahan is a stubborn head coach that honestly is going to get run out of San Francisco if they keep losing these games like this.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same thing that happened with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Beloved in Philly. Everybody still loves Andy Reid.
Yep. As they should.
But his own stubbornness and unwillingness to do certain things started to falter. And that's what took them down that road. You got lucky in the sense when landing in KC and Patrick Mahomes sort of, falling in their lap, so to speak, even though they traded up to get him. But you get an all-generation quarterback, like, it changes everything. You can do whatever the fuck you want at that point.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is not that for Kyle Shanahan.
Not at all.
And a running back only goes so far for you.
Who knew this was just going to be a let's shit on San Francisco show? That was
I'll shit on San Francisco all day. Yeah. I don't give a shit.
Tyler, you just missed it. You chimed in at literally 2 minutes, I think, after we finished this. If you go to the 40-minute mark on the show, you'll hear ours. The TLDR is we don't love him. The inefficiency was saved by a touchdown this past week. In week 13, where nobody's on bye, we're not trying to play Gus Edwards. If Dobbins is out for 2 weeks, Edwards becomes a lot more interesting in week 14 when more teams are on bye. But again, if you want Josh's full thoughts, go to the 40-minute mark of the show. And you'll get everything there. I see the rest of your questions, guys. Bear with us. Just a few questions or just a few moments while we finish up on the running backs here, and we'll get to the rest of the questions. Josh, we talked about McNichols, but I kind of want to shift over to Amir Abdullah. It's a short week for the Raiders. Abdullah is in the exact same situation as McNichols. The top two running backs are hurt. Is Abdullah playable again? He found a receiving touchdown this past week.
Yeah, and that's been his role typically.
Yeah.
It's the receiving work. That's what he's been known for really throughout his career. After getting an early opportunity with Detroit to kind of be like an every down back, teams just realized, look, you're just not good as an every down back, but you've got skills as a receiver. He was a great kick returner in college as well at Nebraska. So like there's a lot of opportunity in the passing game, because the Raiders offense just isn't great. They're not going to move the ball very well. So they're going to have to throw it. Well, that lends itself to dump offs, especially with younger, inexperienced quarterbacks like what they're trotting out. I mean, if Aiden O'Connell can't play, they're stuck starting Desmond Ridder. We've seen the Desmond Ridder experiment. It doesn't go well. So this lends itself to more opportunity for Amir Abdullah. I don't love the matchup. The Chiefs are really good against running backs, despite what Chuba Hubbard was able to do. But you're still going from Chuba Hubbard down to Amir Abdullah. So, again, it just boils down for me. Are you desperate enough to start him? With no teams on a bye this week, I don't know that I am.
Yeah, but there shouldn't be desperation.
Depending on how the rest of your roster is, maybe you might have to throw him in a flex. And you know what? If Zamir White and Alexander Madison are out, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, that's true. Josh, we're going to get to the questions. I'm going to take them out of order here because we were just talking about the Raiders, and Tyler wonders what are our thoughts with Jacoby Myers with Gardner Minshew now out for the season. So it's likely to be Aiden O'Connell. If it's not Aiden O'Connell, it's Desmond Ridder. Jacoby Myers had a really good week this week. 15 targets, 10 catches. Yeah. So he is he and Brock Bowers seem to have the exact same role. It's just which one of them goes off every week. This week, it was Jacoby Myers. I guess the easiest way to ask this question, Josh, are you comfortable with Jacoby Myers as your wide receiver 3 now with some turmoil at the quarterback position? Not that Gardner Minshew isn't the definition of turmoil.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on how the rest of my roster is. I mean, I don't know that you drafted Jacoby Myers as your wide receiver 3, but there's been a lot more injuries to the wide receiver position than running back position of late this year. So maybe Myers is your wide receiver 3. I have a couple leagues where I have Myers and I'm starting him because there isn't really anybody else.
The volume's crazy.
And that's the thing is like, especially if you're in PPR leagues, he's easily a wide receiver 3 because of the volume. just like any player, any wide receiver especially, you're going to have peaks and valleys. That's just how it is. All depends on who the defense wants to key in and stop. Denver Broncos have a pretty solid defense, and they said, we're not going to let Brock Bowers beat us. Bowers had 3 catches for 49 yards. So what does that mean? Jacoby Myers to the fucking moon. Like, it is what it is, you know? I didn't think he was going to have that good of a week. I also didn't believe that Patrick Surtain was going to shadow him. So, you know, it lent itself to a little bit more opportunity for Myers. Because I do remember we got several start-sit questions on our Twitter graphic. Like, you know, Jacoby Myers or so-and-so. And I know one in particular was Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston scored a touchdown in 3 straight weeks. He's been the guy that they look for to get open and, you know, stretch for yak and things like that. Like, I decided to take the upside of the touchdowns over the volume with Myers. Came back to bite me.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have those types of start. Yeah. And you're going to have those types of start-sit questions. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I wouldn't put too much stock on Gardner Minshew, putting it bluntly. He hasn't been good this season, and McConnell could easily come in and outplay him. Marky's over on Twitch, Josh. He has a dilemma. So there's some good players on waivers, specifically Bucky Irving, Jordan Addison. I mean, honestly, everybody on this list. Eckler, Irving, Addison, Shakir, White, Johnson. But he would have to cut a good player. He has Devontae Adams, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Josh Downs, James Conner, Jonathan Taylor. And then we'll get to the second part. So I guess my question is, Josh, are any of these players droppable? Certainly not Jonathan Taylor or James Conner. So I guess the real question is Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. Are you dropping any of these for any of the other guys? I think we have to get Bucky Irving.
Yeah, honestly, I would be fine dropping both Pittman and Downs to get Addison and Bucky Irving.
Yeah,
plain and simple.
I like that.
I mean, I said this a couple weeks ago on Wednesday's No Punt Intended when Anthony Richardson was reinserted in the starting lineup, and I said he would be top 12 against the Jets, which he was.
Yeah. And
then this week, he was one of my downsides. I said he doesn't finish in the top 18. He's going to regress. He has one game this season with over a 50% completion percentage. One game. Everybody said with Anthony Richardson, oh, well, he has the rushing floor, and that's going to elevate him, et cetera, et cetera. Guess what? He had 61 rushing yards this week and was the QB 20.
Yeah.
So that rushing floor means quite literally nothing when you can't throw the football.
I was reading Adam Hutchinson's injury report for Football Guys, and he's expecting Downs to be out till week 15 anyway. And that's kind of where I was going to throw in with Eckler. Eckler's not going to play this week, and then they have a week 14 bye. So Eckler's not a priority add because he's out till week 15, and Downs for that same reason, Josh, I think is easily droppable as well.
Yep.
And then to the second part of his question, Josh, Jared Goff over Patrick Mahomes, and I think this would be a drop Patrick Mahomes situation because it looks like he's saying, does he add him over? Obviously, Mahomes has played better as of late.
I was going to say it was a QB2 this week, but it was also a good matchup against the Panthers.
I was going to say, and Goff, even when good Mahomes, it's kind of been good Goff as well. I'm going to go back to week 8 here. I think that's a fair comparison. So when I'm looking at the quarterback rankings since week 8, Josh, Patrick Mahomes is still, oh, there he is. Patrick Mahomes is the QB4, whereas Goff, even with his monster week, is the QB12. I think you ride Mahomes. This is the Mahomes time of year.
Yeah, I agree. Goff is pretty steady as a low end QB1 most times, and that's kind of what we've said really throughout the entire offseason and really over the last few years with Jared Goff. Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. I know that we've talked for a little bit about potentially being able to drop him. Yeah, which is true. I mean, honestly, you could probably drop Jared Goff and stream both these guys.
I was just going to say 3 weeks ago, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, 3 weeks ago, Patrick Mahomes was droppable. He's come on. I mean, that's the long and short of it.
He's come on, and that's what happens. I mean, he's a good quarterback. So, just that Kansas City offense is just kind of weird right now. But when you got backup tight end scoring 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks, like, I'll keep riding Mahomes. I don't give a shit.
Exactly. Noah Gray has unlocked Patrick Mahomes.
Right?
Austin wants us to work on his lineup here, Josh. 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. He is a fucking loaded lineup. I always try to try to pre-think my answers, and I could not do it with this one. Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Bijan Robinson at running back, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, JSN, T. Higgins, BTJ, McLaurin at wide receiver, tight end, Pitts or Jonnu. So let's start at tight end because we're not flexing either one of these guys. Josh, we're starting Jonnu over Pitts at this point, right?
All day, every day. Jonnu Smith to the fucking moon, baby.
The role is safer. I guess, Josh, I'll work through this one with you. I think Cook is the only running back I'm willing to say we're not starting.
Out of those 4, yes, he would be 4 for me behind Bijan, Brown, and Kenneth Walker.
So I think I'm going to start Bijan and Brown, Josh, and I don't think Walker is going to make the flex for me over a wide receiver. So for me, it's Brown and Bijan at running back. What do you think about that?
To me, it boils down to the matchup. Let me see. Who does Cincy play this week?
I should have that in front.
Cincy plays the Steelers, and Seattle plays the Jets. I think I would go Kenneth Walker over Chase Brown this week.
You know what? And looking at my initial rankings, which have not been touched up yet, I do have Walker ahead. So yes, Josh, you've talked me into it. So Walker and Bijan at running back. And then at wide receiver, you're not benching Justin Jefferson, correct?
You're not benching Justin Jefferson. And right now, you can't bench JSN either.
Words out of my mouth. So this comes down to
those 2 for me. So it boils down to Chase Brown versus Garrett Wilson. In my
Chase Brown, Garrett Wilson, or T. Higgins. He's been hot lately.
He had one good game. I'm not buying into Higgins.
Or let's throw McLaurin in there too. He's also been hot lately, and they might have no running game this
fourth
week.
On the team in target share the last month of the season.
Okay, Josh, I'm sorry.
One 86-yard touchdown.
I was going to say 80-yard touchdowns get me going, my guy. Okay, then let's get it, Josh. Chase Brown or Garrett Wilson?
It's full PPR. I'm going Garrett Wilson.
Okay, so there you go. We are going to tell you to start Kenneth Walker and Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, JSN, and Jonnu Smith at tight end. Good luck to you, Austin. Make sure you chime in next week. Let us know how we did with that big lineup question there.
Yeah.
And then Jeff throws this at us. Is Trevor Lawrence coming back this season? Is BTJ going to rot on his bench? I think Lawrence is back this week. All reports seem to be that he's back.
Yeah, he could very well be. I mean, I just try to think about this logically. If you're the Jaguars, why the fuck do you want him to come back?
You know this ain't your coach next year.
I was like, this isn't your coach next year. Not playing Trevor Lawrence is going to get you closer to the number 1 draft pick. You don't need a quarterback because you just paid Trevor Lawrence the most money in NFL history.
You get to add Travis Hunter.
You can trade that pick for a king's fucking ransom to reload your roster.
Yep.
And you need all the offensive line help you can get. I would look, if I'm running the Jaguars, I'm sitting Trevor Lawrence the rest of the season. I'm putting him on IR. I don't give a shit.
If Mac Jones is the guy, can you play BTJ comfortably?
Not comfortably. It's more matchup based, but the last couple of weeks, because I know he was dealing, I think it was a rib injury that BTJ was dealing with. You could see the downs in his production, especially in the target share. Last couple of weeks, that target share has been up. He is clearly the Jaguars wide receiver 1.
And Josh, if you remember, I've been befuddled about this. When BTJ originally got hurt, they said this was a 2 to 4 week. He could be out. He played through it. Well, guess what? We're getting to the end of that 4 weeks now. So that's where we're going to start seeing better Brian Thomas.
Correct.
All right, we're going to move on to the wide receivers. I cover 4 in the article, technically 5 with the bonus pick. Nick Westbrook-Akine should be your priority ad. Devon Vele, Demario Douglas, Xavier Legette, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. However, there are still a bunch of wide receivers out there. I'm going to give you the names and the percentages. Let Josh talk about some of his favorites and one of his least favorites because Kevontae Turpine's on the list. Wan'Dale Robinson's out there in 50% of leagues. Rashad Bateman, 75%. Alec Pierce, 85%. Calvin Austin, basically the same player as Kevontae Turpine, 99% of leagues. Trey Tucker, 90%. Tim Patrick, 99%. He's getting more involved. Adam Thielen and David Moore. If you believe in this Carolina passing game, everybody seems to be involved right now. Noah Brown, as I mentioned, Washington might have to throw the ball a lot more. He's out there in 90% of leagues. Elijah Moore was involved this week, 85%. Kevontae Turpine, 99%. Sterling Shepard, 95%. And Josh added Dontavian Wicks, so I don't have the percentage. Josh, let's just start at the top of the list. Alec Pierce, you'd think there's some injury availability here.
Yeah, it boils down to how much time Josh Downs misses. You mentioned Football Guys and Adam Hutchinson. That was an injury expert over there. He expects Downs to not be back till week 15. So you're talking a 2-week injury here. We've seen the good Alec Pierce, right? Like he's able to get downfield, which pairs really well with what Anthony Richardson does
perfect.
well, which is throw.
When you watch the game, they look like they were made for each other. Unfortunately, they're the only two.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, like that's just, you're going to see more Alec Pierce. You're going to see more Adonai Mitchell. I mean, if you want to bet on a couple of deep shots, deep opportunities, sure, you could do worse than Alec Pierce. Not a lot of these guys I'm blowing a waiver priority on, to be quite honest, but there's value at least in Alec Pierce without Josh Downs, because now Michael Pittman has to kind of morph into that safety blanket role that Josh Downs was for Anthony Richardson. And we know him and Pittman just really don't have any chemistry at all. So I think you're going to see even more deep shots down the field to Alec Pierce, which could definitely benefit him.
Josh, I jokingly said Calvin Austin is the Cavante Turpine in Pittsburgh, mainly because he is a deep threat receiver who also returns kicks. But when you look at the makeup of this Pittsburgh wide receiver crew, Calvin Austin is the quickest among them and brings something that neither Mike Williams nor George Pickens can bring to the table.
Yeah, those guys don't separate at all. And defenses can bottle them up really quickly. We saw it this past Thursday against the Browns. Denzel Ward was very physical with George Pickens, got all up in his face, got real, like flustered him so bad. This was Pickens' first game under 10 fantasy points with Russell Wilson at quarterback. So if that, like we talk about all the time, this is a copycat league. So if the Cleveland Browns just told you how to stop George Pickens, what are you going to do now?
You're going to do that.
You're going to press him. You're going to get all up in his face. You're going to irritate him. The kid's a hothead.
Yep.
This is what goes on here. So that to me is going to open up some opportunities for Calvin Austin. You know, he essentially is the wide receiver 2 here, plays more out of the slot. He's quicker, gets down the field. They use him in a lot of different ways. And Russ has never had an issue spreading the football around, even if Arthur Smith's play calling is more centralized on like 1 or 2 targets, right?
Yeah.
Russ will work through his progressions. And we saw it against Cleveland. And I want to give a shout out to Austin, our DFS expert, because he and I talked about this when we were previewing Thursday night's game. And he brought up Calvin Austin as sort of like that cheaper, punt play option where he can make or break a game on one play. And that's exactly what happened, because he had the long touchdown, blew up his value in DFS slates. Those are the types of plays that you want. So again, if you're talking like deeper leagues, if teams really start to figure out how to stop George Pickens, Calvin Austin is going to have some value, because we'll get to the tight end position here shortly, but Pat Freiermuth is starting to look like a bit of a mirage here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is more relevant. Let's just ask it now. We just talked about Alec Pierce and that chemistry with Anthony Richardson. Are we adding him over Jordan Addison? I'm still going to go with the real wide receiver in the real passing game.
Yeah, no, you're Jordan Addison, if he is on waivers, is the 1,000% number one priority.
Go get Jordan Addison. Josh, Noah Brown, you briefly touched on this when we were busting McLaurin's balls, but Noah Brown, the wide receiver 1 in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, over the last month, if not for that 86-yard touchdown, Noah Brown leads this team in receiving yards the last month. He's the target share leader over the last 4 weeks. Terry McLaurin is 4th. That is not good. Like, I don't understand why Cliff Kingsbury hates Terry McLaurin so much, but the simple fact is Noah Brown is there. There's value. And Zach Ertz, we've seen starting to pick it up. He had 6 catches and a touchdown this week.
You've been on this, Josh, for 2 weeks where people have been talking McLaurin up, and you're like, Noah Brown and Zach Ertz are the go-to wide receivers right now.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, like I said, I don't think there's like wide receiver 1 potential with Noah Brown, but, this is a guy that, there's value at the end of the bench. Like, if you need a spot start because of injuries or bye weeks, like, I'm okay stashing Noah Brown.
Yeah. And Josh, I missed this one because I missed the Romeo Doubs injury, but you think Dontavian Wicks is at least a play for week 13?
Yeah, I was going through and reading Dwayne McFarland's utilization report, and he actually brought up Dontavian Wicks, so I don't want to steal all the credit here, but Romeo Doubs did leave with an injury. Typically, when Christian Watson goes out, that's when we see the spike weeks for Dontavian Wicks. But the simple fact of the matter is, when Dontavian Wicks plays, he sees targets. Like they work him into the rotation, and he leads this team in targets per route run at a 25% clip. Like that's nothing to shake a stick at. Like
when he plays, they throw him the ball. Yeah.
The problem is he can't fucking catch it. So yes, there's going to be some hiccups, especially because you never know which Packers wide receiver to start anyway.
Yeah.
We've been all on, Jaden Reed all season. We were super high on him in the start. He's like 2 games over 20% target share. And yet we're still trotting him out because we know what can happen when he actually sees the targets. But the problem is, so do defenses. They know what can happen when they leave them open. So, there's value in Wicks at the end of your bench when there's an injury to some of these starters. But again, like I'm not blowing a waiver priority on him because I'm not going to start him anyway.
Yep. All right, moving on to tight ends. First name that has to be mentioned, Taysom Hill, coming off a bye. He is still out there in 50% of leagues because he is on a bye. My take on Taysom Hill is if you don't have one of the big, right now on my list, I'd call it the big 7, maybe the big 5, maybe the big 3. Taysom Hill should be your starter at tight end. He needs to be added. Cole Kmet with a little bit of resurgence. He's out there in 60%, 65% of leagues for Will Dissly, 55% for Pat Freiermuth. He might be a trap. Certainly a trap in redraft. Noah Gray, 99% available. Luke Schoonmaker, 90% available. And I couldn't, Jawan Johnson, 95%, because the Saints have no wide receivers. You're seeing more usage of Jawan Johnson. And I couldn't leave my rookies off the list. Theo Johnson did not look bad this week. He's out there in 90% of leagues. And even hurt, keep an eye on the injury report. Jatavian Sanders is out there in 99% of leagues. He looked really good for one half of football. I hope he makes a quick recovery. Josh, we know everybody's going to go after Taysom Hill this week. That goes without saying, but Will Dissly is playing pretty damn good football right now.
Yeah, he's seeing a career season. Trying to think what he did this past week on Monday night because
it wasn't a whole lot. It was like 4 for 30.
Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, 4 for 47. So I mean, tight end 17 on the week, not terrible. I mean, you throw a touchdown into that, and you've got a great week, right?
Yeah.
Which is typically how it goes at the tight end position. But it's kind of weird this week. We had 14 tight ends score 10 or more, and Freiermuth hit 9.9.
Yeah, I was gonna say they actually got their shit together this week.
Yeah, it was a good tight end week.
They got the memo that everybody was out, and then I don't know if you had more to add to Dissly, but you think Freiermuth is a guy that maybe we shouldn't be jumping in on.
Yeah, I think people are going to look at with Freiermuth that he's second on the team in receiving yards, so he's clearly the second option. Since Russ is coming at quarterback, he's not even the highest targeted tight end on this team. That's Darnell Washington, the backup. Oh, where have we seen that before?
Yeah,
Arthur Smith has an
starting to feel like
Atlanta tight ends, right? Yeah. So yeah, like volume, I guess, in a way is there, but I mean, we're still talking like 4 games and 14 targets. Like it's not anything great. So I think really we're hanging on to like one solid season with Pat Freiermuth, and the name is there, so people want to roster him. Go after a Will Dissly.
Yeah,
people aren't paying attention to him because the name isn't sexy, or people don't know the name because it hasn't been associated with great production in the past. Justin Herbert likes Will Dissly, and Quentin Johnston showed Monday night that he still can't catch the fucking football. So
there's still some.
Justin Herbert's going to throw to people who can, and Will Dissly has been doing that. So
there's still some Quentin Johnston problems. Josh, if folks do not get Taysom Hill, I think the second hottest name on the waiver wire is going to be Noah Gray. 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. Is this something we can? Is this something we can count on? I don't know about 2 touchdowns every game, but
I mean, he's got the Raiders this week. Raiders defense kind of
2 more touchdowns incoming. You heard it here first.
Oh, we know your 2 touchdown special this week.
You know what oh my God, I wish I had my phone next to me. The odds on Noah Gray 2 touchdown has to be like plus 3,600. So.
You're so gonna bet it, aren't you?
I'm as soon as we get off of this show.
I found it really interesting with Noah Gray. Like, the Chiefs have played a lot more 12 personnel now that Rashee Rice is down with an injury. And since DeAndre Hopkins' arrival, his route percentage has steadily decreased, which has been rather surprising.
Yeah.
But, Juju's gotten healthier. They've been using a lot of Justin Watson, which we saw at the beginning part of last year as well. These are guys that Mahomes just kind of has trust in. And I don't think it's so much that he doesn't trust DeAndre Hopkins. I just think he just hasn't worked his way into the system. They haven't really developed that rapport yet. And all that's doing is shifting coverage now to Travis Kelce, because DeAndre Hopkins isn't really on the field running routes, and nobody's scared of Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster, so they're paying more attention to Travis Kelce. Well, if you're running more 12 personnel sets and teams are paying attention to Kelce, it's going to leave Noah Gray wide open. So if the best coverage linebacker or safety is on Travis Kelce, ain't nobody covering Noah Gray. Like, it's there.
I mean, he's wide open when he scores almost every time. So, and then Josh, getting out of tight ends, do we have a tight end controversy in Dallas?
I don't know that we have a controversy. I mean, Jake Ferguson was dealing with a concussion, but I find it really interesting that Luke Schoonmaker is playing the Jake Ferguson role better than Jake Ferguson has this year.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were a little befuddled by the Schoonmaker selection. I believe it was last year out of Michigan. Yep. Maybe there's some weight to it. You know, it doesn't seem like a bad looking tight end, honestly.
Well, let's not forget that Jake Ferguson got his job because of the death of Blake Jarwin. And this is just
no. It was Dalton Schultz moving
Schultz to Blake Jarwin. Like, literally, Dallas just keeps drafting and killing white tight ends. It's what they do.
Well, and then the other kid with the hyphenated last name, his name's eluding me right now, but he's starting to see some run too. Like, they're targeting the tight end position.
Yeah.
And that's a lot more than they're targeting the wide receiver 2 position right now.
And that's after they let Peyton Hendershot walk, and he's out in Kansas City right now. So just a whole weird situation. Guys, I'm going to cover the defenses. If you've never watched this show before, I dig heavier into my defense projections starting tomorrow. However, these are the teams I only focus on the current week that have interesting matchups in week 13 and are available in 50% of leagues. And because everybody was on bye last week, this is the most defenses I've ever mentioned on this show. So you have the Commanders, who get Tennessee, the Chargers, who get Atlanta. The Bills are out there because they were on bye. They get San Francisco. If Brock Purdy's out, this is a way better matchup than it looks like on paper. The Jets get Seattle, and Seattle gets the Jets. That's a game in New York. If this game were in Seattle, I'd be all over the Seahawks in this one. It's in New York, but both defenses are good. Both offenses are giving up a lot of points.
Okay,
the Buccaneers,
the Jets defense is not good, so you can forget that.
They're supposed to be good. I mean, good in fantasy, Josh. They're averaging like 7 fantasy points per game, but they have went the wrong direction as of late. Tampa Bay, also not a good defense, but they get Carolina. Might be worth a gamble there. The Packers get Miami. Miami is still giving up a lot of fantasy points to defenses. The Cowboys have been
cold weather in Green Bay.
Yeah, the Cowboys have been atrocious this season, but they get Cutlets and the Jets. I think they're worth a play. The Colts get New England. The Giants get Dallas. And then the Cardinals get Minnesota. I looked, Josh, it was pretty interesting. Minnesota actually gives up the 18th most fantasy points, the 14th most fantasy points to defense and special teams. And the Cardinals are averaging like 6.5 fantasy points per game. So they're a sneaky defense against a sneaky play there, because you think that's going to be a heavy offensive game. But look what that happened to do to us against the Seattle Cardinals game. It could end up being just the slowest and worst game ever. So keep that in mind. We do have one quick question, Josh. The Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown, popped up on the injury report. Do we think he plays on a short week? I don't think he misses this game. They're way too red hot right now.
Yeah, they're way too red hot. It's Thanksgiving. It's prime time. Like, this is the kind of stuff that ARSB, lives for, really.
And it's a division game.
And it's a division game. Absolutely, yeah. It's against the Bears. Doesn't Equinemius still play for the Bears?
No, Saints.
Or did they cut him? Oh, that's right. He's on the Saints.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone flamed Equinemius on Twitter the other day about Equinemius gave someone a hard time, and then someone said to him, like, if you were better at your job, you wouldn't have to change cities every 3 weeks or something. It was rough. So yeah,
that's hilarious. Look, I'm not going to profess to be an injury expert, so I don't know how serious the injury is. So I'll be honest with you, Jeff, this really isn't a question I feel that comfortable answering. But
watch the practice reports.
If it's unserious enough, just pay attention to the practice reports. We'll probably know more on Wednesday. So tomorrow night, when Joe and I go on for No Pun Intended, we'll probably have some clearer information, at least on that front.
Yeah, and Austin and I will certainly be discussing it on the DFS show, because it's going to matter a lot for DFS. So
yeah, so I would lean yes, but stay tuned.
Yep. Mayday, Mayday. You drafted these guys. You spent fab on these guys. You've held on to them for too long. Honestly, Josh, the list got a lot shorter this week. I wasn't comfortable telling people to cut Jalen Waddle anymore. I wasn't comfortable telling them to cut Patrick Mahomes or CJ Stroud. So I got 4 names. I think they're all droppable, Josh. One's going to break your heart, but I think I've also said him for about 3 weeks now. Aaron Rodgers is still 45% rostered. Folks, you did not need to hold Aaron Rodgers through a bye week. Move on. Raheem Mostert is losing his job to Jalen Wright. He's 53% rostered. Move on. Tyler Lockett has lost his job to Jackson Smith-Njigba, 63% rostered. Move on. And Josh, for the second consecutive week, Deontay Johnson goose-egged in fantasy football, 58% rostered. Baltimore traded for him to make sure nobody else did.
I mean, honestly, I've been saying for a month you could drop him. Like, he wasn't looking great in Carolina. Then he got hurt, and then he got traded like the first week or so back. Like, just the limited amount of routes run. I think he had a target yesterday that bounced right off his hands. And I'm just like, with Deontay, yes, you know how good he is as a route runner, as an athlete, what he's capable of doing in high volume. But when his role is so diminished, his head's not in the game at all.
Yeah.
And so at that point, he's just a decoy.
Yeah.
And then you saw what happened, like Rashad Bateman with 40-yard touchdown. Zay Flowers heavily involved. Mark Andrews touchdown. I mean, Isaiah Likely didn't even see a target in this game. So, yeah, you can cut bait with Deontay Johnson.
I agree. Josh, I'm going to get us out of here with what we're looking for in week 13. However, we got 2 last questions. Tangevine wants to know, should they trade David Montgomery and Baker Mayfield for Christian McCaffrey? They currently have Josh Allen, so they do not need quarterback help. They have Saquon and James Conner as well. So they're essentially giving up Monty to get CMC because they don't need Baker. Josh, I'm not sure Monty's not the better play right now.
Monty is the better player right now. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the injury that he left with.
Yeah.
Is it serious or not? Is he going to miss extended time? But like, you tell me you don't trust David Montgomery more than CMC right now. He's in a better offense. He's more productive and been more productive all season.
Yeah. Do they have another running back? Are they sitting on Saquon Barkley? Offer that trade. See what they do. But yeah, right. I don't think CMC is a buy right now. I agree with Josh. And then Jeff follows up. If there is no sun god, does he start BTJ or Calvin Ridley? I think we both agree this is Calvin Ridley.
It's not close.
Yeah, very easily Calvin Ridley. Jeff, don't have an issue throwing him in your lineup. Josh, I looked at the week 13 matchups. This might be my least amount of questions after having the most defenses and everything, but here are my questions. You tell me if you find any of them interesting. Can Bo Nix keep it going up against Myles Garrett in Cleveland? Obviously, that Cleveland defense is not great. Myles Garrett is great. How's Caleb Williams going to look in the national spotlight in this Thanksgiving game in Detroit? Can San Francisco get it together, or is Buffalo going to run away with this game? This is not a good game for San Francisco to not be at 100%. Is Cooper Rush versus Tommy DeVito as bad as advertised? Nobody is looking forward to that 4:00 game this week. Who is actually going to look worse? Is it going to be the Giants or the other New York City team, the Jets, who are at home against Seattle? Which Taysom Hill do we get this week? He rarely stacks good weeks. Are we going to get a 0 out of the Rams for Taysom Hill? How many quarterback rushing yards, Josh? Baltimore versus Philadelphia. That's a fun one. And, of course, the reminder to everyone, 3 games on Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving. But, Josh, when you look at these games this week, any of my questions jump out to you, or any games that I missed that we should be paying attention to?
No, I am so hyped for Baltimore, Philly.
I bet you
and
are.
Not just because I'm an Eagles fan. But here's a really interesting stat that I don't know that very many people pay much attention to. In Lamar Jackson's career, he's lost only 1 game to the NFC.
Interesting.
1.
He's been around for a while.
Do you know the quarterback that beat him?
Oh, no. Who is it?
Daniel fucking Jones.
Oh my God.
Daniel fucking Jones is the only NFC quarterback to have beaten Lamar Jackson as the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens.
It's like 5 years in.
This is going to be an all-time, and not even just because it's Jalen Hurts versus Lamar Jackson. It's Derrick Henry versus Saquon Barkley, the top 2 running backs in the NFL right now in total yards.
Love it.
And again, Philly's defense has been great. Baltimore's defense looked good last night. They weren't giving up the passing yards that we all thought they might. I mean, can they slow down Saquon? Because
this game
Jalen
might
Hurts is going to have
end.
to throw the football. Like,
This game might end in 2 hours and 10 minutes. Like, this might be the fastest game in NFL history.
It could be a fast game. It could also be Kellen Moore overthinking things and deciding that he just wants to throw the football 35 times. This game could go a lot of different ways. It really could. And I'm so excited to see which way that it goes. Like, this would be a game that if I'm betting, I'm staying far away from this game because there's so many different variables.
You just don't know.
You just want to watch this game.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of WireTapped. Good luck on your waiver wire bids this week. Club Fantasy is going to do its basically, I don't want to say its full line of shows, but we are going to have shows for you still every day but Friday this week. So schedule changes a bit. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, Josh and Joe are going to take over, no pun intended, with no me this week because I am going to be recording our DFS show that same time so we can drop it a day early for you guys. On the Josh and Joe are going to cover the entire week 13 from a redraft perspective. So any of your start sit questions, make sure you hit up those guys. That's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. On 9 a.m. Thursday, we're going to drop our Thanksgiving episode for DFS. We are going to cover the DFS slate by itself, the Black Friday game by itself, and then the main slate by itself. I'm going to let Austin do all the talking this week. You don't have me muddying up the waters at all. You're going to get great advice from Austin and Mandolia. And then if you still have start sit questions, we're going to be back on Saturday for start sit different day. That's an 11 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Eastern show. So we are still going to be here for you, just not as much during Thursday and Friday for the holiday, but we're going to get you set ahead of time. Plain and simple. Club Fantasy is here to help you win, but more importantly, happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate every one of you guys. Coming up on 1,350 subscribers, more than doubled from a year ago today. You're the reason we're doing a show tomorrow. We normally take Wednesdays off, but we are not going to let you guys down. We know you're here for us. We're here for you. That's what it's all about. Good luck on your waiver wire bids. Good luck in week 13. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. Have a good one.
Peace out.